Shalom everyone, and today we're studying a very significant parasha, Parashat Ki-Tavo. Parashat Ki-Tavo is in the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 1. What's special about it? It is very potent parasha, and as we see, this parasha relates especially to our days. And a lot of the things that we are going through right now is basically prophecies coming true of this parasha especially. Okay, now if you go to the Zohar itself, the original set of Zohar, a manuscript that is being revealed in the late 13th century in Spain, has no commentary on Parashat Ki-Tavo. Only a later batch of writings that were called Zohar Hadash, it's like the new batch, the new publication of other manuscripts of the Zohar, has something about the parasha. And it's amazing, it's an amazing story, and let's read the story. Before that, a little bit about background for the people who did not read the parasha in the Torah. So it starts, Ve'haya Ki-Tavo, and it will be when you come to the El Haaretz, to the land, Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala, that the Lord your God is giving you as inheritance. V'yirishta ve'yashavta ba, and you will inherit it, and you will dwell in it, or settle it. And then it speaks about the bikurim. Bikurim means the first fruits of the field. During the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem, or before that in Shiloh, you had to bring the first fruits to the Kohen. What's the significance of that for us today? Because meanwhile, this week we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, we don't have the temple. So what do I do with that? We'll relate to that also. And then after that, we have verses that that during the ceremony, bringing the first fruit, that you whoever knows the Passover Haggadah will find that these verses in the beginning of the Haggadah about Egypt, about getting out of Egypt, about all the miracles of Egypt, and it's about basically the most important thing is chapter 26, verse 11, Vesamachta bechol hatov, and you should be happy and rejoice with all the good that the Lord your God, Asher natan lecha Adonai Elohecha ulvetecha, that the Lord your God gave to you and to your household. Ata, you, ve'alevi, and the Levites, ve'hager, and the alien that came to live amongst you. Okay? And that's you will see that issue, ve'samachta, the shoresh, the root, sin mem chet, sameach, to rejoice, to be happy, repeats itself few times in a very, very special manner in this parasha. You're supposed to rejoice and to be happy with all what God gave you. Okay? So that's the first time it's being mentioned. Then you have about tithing. It's not the first time the mitzvah of tithing appears, but that's in chapter 26, verse 12. Which means it's not just you bring the first fruit, 10% of your yield should go for charity, for the poor, for the Levites, for the orphans, for the widows, and they should be vesaveu. Verse 12, your responsibility is that they will be satiated. Okay? And then there's a very important thing that looks like it doesn't connect. And then you come in front of God in the house of God, and you say, Bi'arti HaKodesh min Habayit. I removed the holy from the house, which means all my dues of giving, which is holy, it is sanctified because the 10% of the yield of my income is holy because it doesn't belong to me. I must give it over. I cannot keep it for myself because what is 10%? In Hebrew, it's the 10th. The 10th is Sefirat Malchut, which means Sefirat Malchut is the symbol for the end of the tree of life. If you keep it for yourself, you become finite and you have no way to connect to the infinite. You want the infinite to flow into your money, into your yields, into your home, in whatever belongs to you. The only way to do it is to move over, to give over 10%, the 10th, Malchut, so you're not holding that to yourself. That's called Bi'alti HaKodesh Min Habayit. But there's another side to it, especially nowadays, one of the greatest prophecies that repeat itself many times in the Zohar, especially in the parashot around Shavuot, Be'alotcha, in Parashat Naso, and some other places also, that in our days, the Zohar will be the protection shield against all the calamities around us. The Zohar and the study of the Zohar and the consciousness that the Zohar is bringing us. So the story is like this. The Chida, one of the greatest Kabbalists in the 18th century, that he tells in his story that a guy comes to him on Shabbat in the synagogue and asks him, Rabbi, I had a dream. In my dream, a wise man with a white beard and a white gun came to me in the dream and said, you are behema. In Hebrew, behema means a beast, which means you're a human being without a soul. You're just a body. Why did he tell me that I'm behema? It's a very demeaning expression. So the rabbi looks at the man and says, you had a set of Zohar in your home, and you took it out from the house. He says, how did you know that? He says, because behema is from this verse, chapter 26, verse 13. Behema is bi'alti hakodesh min habayit. I removed the holiness from the house. I took the Zohar out of my house, and therefore I am behema. You're a beast. You have to put the Zohar in your house, and you're not supposed to listen to anyone who tells you it's too holy for you. Take the Zohar out of your house. That's a very iconic story about having a Zohar in the house and learning it, even if you don't understand, because this is one of the most potent remedies to all the maladies of our generation. So let's continue. We have in this Parashat Ki-Tavo, many blessings, and they're very, very powerful blessings. They're very epic blessings that you can find them. You can use that in when you want to bless somebody. You can use it a lot. Okay, but there are also curses. And that's the problem with this parasha. A lot of people do not know how to relate to these curses. Even in most communities, during the reading of the Torah on Shabbat, the reader, the one who's reading the Torah for the whole congregation, he is usually reading the curses with a lower voice because it doesn't sound politically correct. It's like God speaks such a harsh language of cursing whoever is going to go against the laws of the Torah. Okay? So you can read the blessings on chapter 28 from verse 1 and on. Amazing blessing. It's like everybody should read that. But then, after those amazing blessings, come the curses. And it's starting on verse 15. והיה אם לא תשמע בקול אדוני אלוהיך. And if you do not listen to the Lord your God, לשמור ולעשות, to observe and to do all those mitzvot and all those laws and statutes, then all of those coming curses will reach you. And then there's a whole long story of terrible, horrible curses that it's very hard even to read them, not just to pronounce them, and not even to read them in public. Okay? And again, on verse 47, chapter 28, it says, why all of these curses? תחת אשר לא עבדת את השם אלוקיך בשמחה ובטוב לבב מרוב כל. Because, and it's instead of, that you do not serve the Lord your God with simcha. Again, the same verb we spoke about before, happiness, joy, excitement. You did not serve the Lord your God with happiness and joy, with a good heart, with all the good that you have. Therefore you get all of these curses. And more than that, the verse before, Vayu becha, all of these curses, the whole world will see the curses inflicting you. Le'ot umofet, it will be like a sign, like a miraculous sign, mofet, because it's unbelievable, the curses that are going to be inflicted upon you, the nation of Israel, you and your offsprings forever, almost forever, because you're not serving the Lord your God with happiness, with good heart. And more curses are coming. And again, if you want some terrible curses to curse somebody, I'm not recommending. It's here. Okay? So there are terrible curses over there, and we'll continue with the story of the Zohar, which is an amazing story that everybody should read that story in the Zohar every year, just before Rosh Hashanah, because this Parashat Ki-Tavo, according to the Talmud, we must read that just not long before Rosh Hashanah. Why? To remind us, Rosh Hashanah is always in the month of Tishrei, and the zodiac sign of the month of Tishrei is Moznaim, the scales, Libra in Latin. Okay, the scales. Here you have the curses, and here you have the blessings. And you have the choice. It's all about your own choice that you have to make daily, because that's what makes us human, that we understand that we have the choice. And therefore, when we come to Rosh Hashanah and the holidays afterwards, all the holidays of Tishrei, we have to remember, we have both in front of us, the curses and the blessings. And we must be able to remember that it depends on us, not on the Creator, because from the Creator's point of view, His giving is endless. If you don't believe that, you're not a monotheist, because monotheism is about the greatness of the Creator, the only one Creator. And what does it mean that He is one? He's never changing, which means we, the creatures, cannot change His opinion about us. And the moment we apply our emotions and our shortcomings, and we bring it upon the Creator, and we just, we personify Him, we're not monotheists anymore. Because monotheism is about mono. Mono means oneness. One, and one means no changing. Okay, remember that. So when we feel something is wrong, it's not wrong because He, the Creator, changed His mind about us. No, it's because we somehow went off line and we're not connected properly anymore. So what do? You have to reconnect. And here, so how do we reconnect? So one of the most amazing parts of the Zohar, in the Zohar Hadash, okay, which is, again, it's another set of manuscripts, smaller, that was revealed after the first batch of manuscripts have been revealed. And he speaks as follows in Zohar Hadash, Parashat Ki-Tavo. I'm starting from the beginning. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Azalei ve'arak lemadbera dilud. We know the story about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He had to run away from the Romans. It was a big war. The war between the second revolt of the Jews against the Roman Empire. Okay, that revolt was had a huge impact on the Roman Empire because 10 legions have been wiped away. Still, that revolt has been crushed. There was a big massacre. Hundreds of thousands of Jews have been killed. Jerusalem had been wiped. It was wiped 60-something years before, but it was established. Emperor Adrian has built a new city, Ilia Capitolina. On it, Jews were not allowed to enter that city, and the whole city was dedicated to the idols of Rome. So terrible results. Most of the Jews around Jerusalem that survived the first rebellion have been wiped. So in the southern part of Israel, just around Jerusalem and south, no Jews have been left. Either they were killed or sold as slaves or ran away. So it was terrible revolt. Rabbi Akiva was executed by the Romans, the great teacher of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon ran away and hid in a cave for 13 years. Okay, why did he was so powerful? Why did he have to hide? So why did he have to run away? You have to remember, Moses had to run away, although he had huge powers. Jacob had to run away. There's this message about running away for us, because as human beings, we have to make a lot of effort to run away from our dungeon, which is a physical state of mind that says, you know what you see is what you get. This is the world. You have to work hard, make a living, feed the family, serve the community around you, be a good citizen, and that's it. There's nothing else for life. And to run away from that, this is the hardest thing in the world, because we are so much attached to our physical body, the consciousness and the logic of the physical senses. And we all know how tough it is to run away from that, outside the box, as they call it today, and to really free ourselves. So Rabbi Shimon is in the cave. He's basically reaching levels that very few arrived to that levels before, thanks to the fact that he ran away. He's in a cave. He is not bothered by politics or by any issues of finances or community. Nobody comes to harass him with questions as a rabbi. Rabbi, ask me. It's like he has this 13 years on a desolated island, really in a cave, away from the people. He can really focus on getting out of the box. And that's how the Zohar came to the world. והתגנז בחד מעטה, so he's hiding in that cave. הוא ורבי אלעזר ברי, him and Rabbi Elazar his son, התרחש לו ניסה, they had a miracle, ונפק לו חד חרובה, and a carob tree grew next to the cave, וחד מעיינה דמיה, and a spring came next to the cave, so אכלי מהו חרבה, ושתן מינון מים, so they ate from the carob tree for 13 years. They drank from that spring. More than that, that's not enough. Hava Eliyahu Zal, so Elijah the prophet, Atelon bechol yomat reizim name, came to visit them twice a day to teach them the secrets of the universe, that later on were called the Zohar, as it was committed to writings. And nobody knew where they are. Yom Echad, during that time, that Rabbi Shimon and his son are hidden in the cave. The sages of that generation, the sages, the Tanaim, they were called Tanaim, they were great Kabbalists, great wise people, and they were the colleagues of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar, his son. And they were in the academy, Beit Midrash, and they were questioning what? This parasha of Ki-Tavo. And they said, Klalot shebetorat Kohanim, inun keneged bait rishon. There are two sections with curses in the 5 books of Moses. The first one is at the end, Parashat Bechukotai, of the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra. And it's called the Klalot, the curses of Torat Kohanim, the laws of the Kohanim, which the book of Leviticus is all about the Levites and the Kohanim. Okay, at the end, there's a bunch of curses over there, and it's called the curses of the book of Leviticus. So what does it say? We all know that those curses, they relate for the destruction of the first temple and the exile that followed after that destruction. Okay? Klalot shebemishne Torah, and the curses in Parashat Ki-Tavo that we're reading this week, as we just read right now in Parashat Ki-Tavo, which is in the book of Deuteronomy, these curses are related to the exile following the destruction of the second temple. Okay? Now, hine beklalot shebetorat kohanim. So, in the curses of the book of Leviticus, in Bechukotai, the curses that relate to the exile that followed the destruction of the first temple, this we are talking about, the destruction happened some 26 centuries ago, okay? And then after the first temple is being destroyed by the Babylonians, most of the Jews, they were called Jews because most of the Israelites at that time, they lived under, or what is called the kingdom of Judea. So they were called Jews, although not all of them were from the tribe of Judah. It was the biggest tribe. Most of the population of that kingdom of Judea, that its capital was Jerusalem, have been taken to exile to what is Babylon. What we know is Iraq and western part of Iran, over there. So that's the first exile. Okay, some were exiled already. Some ran away to Egypt, some went to Yemen, some went all the way far to Tunisia, according to the legends, in North Africa. So they were already, that's called the first exile, the first destruction. However, said those wise men, if you read the curses in the book of Vayikra, okay, the curses that relate to the destruction of the first temple, itbeu avtachot. Among the curses, you see already promises, v'chavivu dekudsha b'chol Israel, and the love of God to His nation Israel, promising them, don't worry, this exile won't be long. You'll be able to come back home very soon. And Prophet Jeremiah, who lived at that time, he prophesied the destruction of the first temple. He also prophesied that exile will last for 70 years. So he told them, you're going to an exile, but 70 years from now, you'll be able to come back. And exactly 70 years after the destruction of the first temple, the second temple has been built. Most Jews, by the way, did not come back, although King Cyrus of Persia gave the Jews the permit to come back and rebuild their country, their capital, Jerusalem, and their temple in Jerusalem. He even took the treasures of the temple in Jerusalem that the Babylonians looted from Jerusalem, from the temple, and gave them back to the Jews to go back and use them in the temple. Very few Jews, relatively, only a few tens of thousands, came back to rebuild the temple. Most of them stayed in a flourishing culture of the new empire, the Persian Empire. Okay, and some say that's why the second temple was not that blessed as the first one, because there were most of the Jews stayed outside in the diaspora. Okay, now, so as we said, but you can see that in the curses in the book of Leviticus, that was written years before, that there's going to be an exile, but it's going to be short. Okay? Because it says, Vezacharti briti Yaakov, and I'll remember my covenant with Jacob. וכתוב גם זאת בהיותם בארץ אויביהם, even though they're going to be in the land of their enemies, I'll remember them and they'll be able to come back to their home. But the curses in the book of Deuteronomy, they don't have any promises. They don't have any limit for how long the exile will last. And there's no consolation over there, which like in the first exile. So remember, this we are talking about, it's 70 years after the destruction of the second temple, which was in the year 70 CE. It was after 2 rebellions already. There were in the future 8 more rebellions that the Jews rebelled against the Roman Empire in the next few centuries. Okay? And the sages of that generation did not see the end. And they were really kind of worried. Kan Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai v'amar, verse 3. Rabbi Yehuda bar Elai, one of the great Tanaim, Oy al chesrono shel Bar Yochai. It's painful that we're missing Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Ve'en mi shodeh mimena, nobody knows where is he. And whoever knows should not reveal the secret. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, kam yom achad besafar, he woke up one day in the morning, chamei kolinun ofin dinun havu tasan, he saw a lot of birds flying, veshafnina chada azla batrayor, and he sees one dove amongst them. Kam al raglo, he got up and said, ve'amar, shafnina, shafnina, dav, mehena, loyal dav, you are a symbol of peace from the flood. You know, Noah's dove. Okay? And you are a symbol to the holy nation. There are many, many places in which the nation of Israel is being compared to a dove. You are really fit. To make a mission. Chada le Bar Yochai, a mission to Bar Yochai, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Ba'atar diutaman, in the place he is. Istacharau shafnina vekamat kamei. The dove made a circle around him and stood in front of him. Khatar pitka chada, he wrote a note. Okay, Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda. V'amar ma she'amar, and he wrote a note for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Vekamat shafnina untalat befuma. So the dove took the note, Vazalat legabe Rabbi Shimon, and the dove flew to Rabbi Shimon in his cave. V'shaviat lebichnafah, istakal bo pitka ovecha. Rabbi Shimon read the note and he started to cry. Hu veRabbi Elazar Brei, and Rabbi Elazar his son joined him, crying. They sat together and cried in the cave. Ve'amar, and he said, B'cheina al prishutna min chavraya, I'm crying that I'm separated from my friends. U'v'cheina al milin ilin, דלית גניין להום מה יעבדון, דרי בתרי ישגיחו בהי. And I'm crying because they can't understand the secret of the curses in Parashat Ki-Tavo that we're just reading right now. What if they can't understand, and they are such huge sages, what will happen during the last generations? Because this exile is going to be really long. And the Zohar speaks about 1,000 years of exile, and more than 1,000 years, and the stages after the 1,000 years are over, till the redemption will happen. They know it's going to be a very, very long exile, very dark exile. And they call it first the dark millennium. We call it today the dark ages, right? So Rabbi Shimon was saying, if my friends, my colleagues, who are so wise and so educated and so magical, each one of them, and they are upset because they can't get it, what will happen with the generations before the redemption, that they won't have such great, magical, wise people, teachers around amongst them. So I'm crying for the last generations. How will they react for these readings? Because people read the curses of the book of Deuteronomy. If you really don't know how to read it, in between the lines, the way Rabbi Shimon is going to teach us, really Elijah the prophet, you can really get like, what for? And a lot of Jews during the last few centuries said, what for? And they just converted to other religions, like, who cares about it? Let me just live my life. Who needs this burden of such a heritage and such a burden? I want to be like everybody else. So Rabbi Shimon was crying about it. So as he was crying, I'm reading verse 6 in the Zohar HaSulam for this parasha, Zohar Hadash. Adhachei ata Eliyahu zal. So as Rabbi Shimon and his son are crying, comes Elijah the prophet. Chamed ivchein, he sees them crying. Amar bishlichuta acha haven azamin, hashta v'shadrani kutsha v'chu l'shakcha demaich. I was involved in another mission, but the Creator saw you crying, and he told me to come over and to appease you in your, when in your tears. And he says, Elijah the prophet, the secret is so great about the real meaning of these curses that it's not the time to reveal the secret even for the righteous. Verse 7. But the Holy Blessed be He, the Creator, said as follows, Biklalot kadmain it lamed bet krai. In the first batch of curses in the book of Leviticus, in Parashat Bechukotai, there are 32 verses. 32 is Lev, Lamed Bet. It's a number, Hebrew letters are also numbers. You can also read the number. So the number Lamed Bet, you can read it as Lev. Lev means the heart. V'cholo lekabel shvilei doraita. And there are 32 paths of wisdom in the Torah, which are mentioned in the book of Formation. Okay? Those paths are paths that the person has to walk through in order to fulfill the mission of his soul. So the first batch of curses in the book of Leviticus, there are 32 verses corresponding to the 32 paths of wisdom. And also, we know the Torah starts with a bet, Bereshit, and the Torah completes with the letter Lamed, Israel. So the Torah starts with a bet, ends with a Lamed, so it's Lamed Bet. So the two letters Lamed Bet, they somehow symbolize from the beginning to the end of the whole wisdom of the Torah, the 32 paths of wisdom. Now, in the last curses, which means the curses of Parashat Ki-Tavo, there are 53 verses, which means that correspond to 53 parashot in the Torah. The Torah is divided into 53 parashot, parts, that every week we read another parasha of those 53. And those 53, 53 in Hebrew is Nun Gimel, and you can read it as Gan, the garden. Garden. Which garden? If you follow and you live those 53 parashot, you will live in the garden of heaven, here, heaven on earth. Which means there are 53 parashot and paths in the Torah. Verse 8. Begalut kadma b'bayit rishon. The first exile, the destruction of the first temple, Avu Israel, it happened because the nation of Israel transgressed Inun Shvilin Stimin de Sitra, the 32 hidden paths of wisdom. They're hidden, they're metaphysical, they're very, very spiritual. The physical eye will not be able to see them, only the spiritual eye. Okay? So, because the paths of those 32 hidden paths have been transgressed, therefore, the Israelites transgressed the hidden paths, so the redemption has been revealed. And the end of the redemption, of the end of the exile, has been revealed. And also the consolations and promises were very much in the open, obvious. Everybody can read. Begalut batra de Beit Sheni, but the exile of the second temple, that was different. The second temple, everybody in a way followed the Torah. There was no idol worshipping. Okay? However, the biggest sin was hatred for no reason. And because sis love the other person as you love yourself includes everything, and the hatred was so obvious, then it's like transgressing all 53 parashot of the Torah. So because that was so obvious and so revealed, therefore their sins have been hidden, because on the outside everybody was very religious. And therefore the end of the exile is hidden, and it's secret. And you cannot see any promises and any consolations for the second destruction and second exile. Verse 9. Adachi, as Elijah explains it, Elijah the prophet explains it to Rabbi Shimon and his son. A wind came, and they were separated. And with that wind, and Elijah is going up back to heaven in a chariot of fire. Rabbi Shimon was left alone, and he continued to cry. And he cried himself to sleep in the opening of the cave. So after he slept for a while, Elijah the prophet comes back. Amar kum Rabbi Shimon. He says, get up, Rabbi Shimon, wake up. It'ar mishnatcha. Zakach ulakach. You're really praiseworthy, because the Creator loves you so much, and He is ready to reveal the secret for you, to you. Kol avtachot v'nechamot d'Yisrael behanei klalot ktivei. All the promises, there are consolations, there are prophecies for a good ending of the second exile, the longest exile, but they are hidden among the curses. They are written in the curses themselves. Verse 10. Hok v'chazei, come and see. מלכה דירכם לברי, ואף על גב דלתיה ועל קיי. You have a king, and he is really upset about his son, but he loves his son so much. He loves him beyond anything else, but he knows that his son did something wrong, terribly wrong. So he yells at him, he threatens him, he beats him up. But he, from deep inside, he feels his love towards his son so much. So you have mercy and love inside his yelling and his screams and his curses. So, although he curses, it was all with love. How can you curse with love? So on the outside, on the external part of those words of Parashat Ki-Tavo, it looks like curses. But they are great, good blessings. Those curses were with love. There was not so much love among the first curses in Leviticus. That was a judgment. Because remember, the first temple was destroyed mostly because of idol worshipping. That the Israelites, on those times of the first temple, you can see today in the excavations. On one hand, they worshipped God in the temple, but on the other hand, you can find in the excavations in Jewish cities along the country, they were also worshipping idols. Okay, there were Jews that worshiping idols, and you can find it everywhere exactly as the Torah tells us. But during the time of the second temple, nobody worshipped idols. Nobody cared for the Greek or Roman idols. They laughed at them. They mocked them. Everybody saw it as stupidity. Okay? That was not the problem. They loved God. They worshiped God, but they had a big, big problem of fighting with each other, disunity, and we know that's really terrible, but still, they were much closer to God during the time of the second temple. So, we're coming to verse 12, which is the punchline of the whole thing. And the worst of all those curses. דאו דכתיב גם כל חולי וכל מכה אשר לא כתוב בספר התורה יעלם השם עליך עד ישמדך. This is in the book of the Parashat Ki-Tavo, chapter 28, verse 61. And also, all the diseases and all the plagues that are not written in this Torah, God will bring it upon you till you're going to be destroyed. And I said it many times. Whoever speaks Hebrew, modern Hebrew, in Israel, whoever is Israeli, when you see that when an Israeli is really upset about something, very upset, beyond being upset, he calls it Maka Shelo Ktuva B'Torah. He quotes this verse. This is a plague that is even not written in the Torah. That's how he called it. When you can, it's beyond description. It's indespicable. It's beyond imagination. How terrible it is. You use that verse to define this calamity. Okay? Till today, we're talking about after that was written 33 centuries later, and it's part of everyday's language. And I don't know if all Israelis know that they're quoting it from the Torah itself. Even secular, I'm not talking about just religious. It's like modern part of Hebrew. Okay? But this is the worst curse of all of them. Because it's beyond description even. Okay? So, says Elijah the prophet, go back and read that verse again. In the Torah, in Hebrew. גם כל חולי וכל מכה שלא כתוב בספר התורה הזאת, all diseases and all plagues that are not written in this Torah, the word is Ya'alem, and Elijah says the human brain will immediately understand that the word Ya'alem means will bring upon you. Okay? Here, it's not a curse. These are loving promises, everlasting, eternal promises. How come? Because it doesn't say Ya'aleh. It doesn't say really bring upon you. That's the word Ya'aleh. It says Ya'alem. And Ya'aleh means will hide, Yichbosh otam v'yichaseh otam, will hide them and suppress them so they will never be released in their hole in the ground, like being suppressed and hidden in the hole in the ground. Adi Shamdach, it will, till you're being destroyed, it will never be happen. It will never happen, which means, here it says, you're going into, after the destruction of the second temple, Moses is telling the Israelite nation, after the destruction of the second temple, you will go into a terrible, long journey in the exile. It will be long, you won't be able to see the end of it. However, God is promising you that you will never be destroyed and exterminated. All kinds of nations will try to eliminate you from the face of the earth. Huge civilizations, huge religions will try to destroy you. Superpowers will try to destroy you. God is promising you, you will resist that, you will survive that, you must be there to the end of the days, because no one will be able to destroy you, because any judgment that, even if you deserve it, that will come upon you, it will be suppressed and you will survive forever. And Elijah says, if you read it, you will see that this is the biggest promise that the Jewish people ever got. And, 2,000 years later, and we see that promise coming true, like we can see today. Verse 14, because it is like a promise, an oath of God to the nation of Israel that they will never be eliminated, there will never be a plague or a disaster that will eliminate the Jewish people altogether from the face of the earth. That will never happen. Okay, so it is a promise. Then Elijah says, I'll give you another one. At the end, towards the end of all the curses, just the last verse of the curses is verse 68 in chapter 29. And it says, Veshivcha Hashem Mitzrayim ba'oniyot, and God will bring you back to Egypt in ships. Okay? That I told you not to go back over there. V'itmakartem sham lo'evecha la'avdim, and you will be sold over there as slaves and maids. And there won't be buyers because there will be so many of you. And after the destruction of the first temple, second temple, and after later on the Bar Kokhba rebellion, there were so many Jews who were taken to Alexandria in Egypt. Alexandria was like the New York of those days. It was not the capital of the Roman Empire, but it was the greatest economical center and cultural center. So a lot, like hundreds of thousands of Jews are being captured and were sold all around the Mediterranean, but the main center for the selling was in Egypt. So that prophecy had been fulfilled. It says, no, you can read it. It's basically a prophecy about the end of the days. And it says like this: at the end of all the days, says Elijah, you could read the same verse differently. The nation of Israel will come back to its own country and will establish a country back in Israel. Okay? These are oaths and promises in the end of the days. There will be miracles like there were miracles during the Exodus. And the whole world saw the miracles of the last century. How Jews came back from more than 100 countries around the world and established a new country, that country, in spite of all the attacks and all the hatred among the nations of the world, that country grew bigger and bigger and bigger and flourished and became a power like never before. Okay? So that you will be able to see miracles like coming out of Egypt. And that's why it says, Veshivcha Hashem leMitzrayim, and God will bring you to Egypt. The Zohar says, no, he will bring you to the days of the Egyptian Exodus, that the whole world will be able to see impossible victories, 48, 67, 73, and more victories over the desert, over all the impossible conditions, bringing so many Jews from all over the world into a land that was just a desert till a century ago, and now it's a blooming oasis in the middle of the troubled Middle East. Okay, and more than that, and you see like all the startups and the electronics and the wisdom and medicine that is coming from that forbidden country that was nothing, it worth nothing, just 100 years ago. Verse 16, Ba'oniyot, says, we'll bring you back to Egypt with ships. But there's another way to read the word ships. Okay? The word aniyot, you can read it also beto'anot. Beto'anot means that all the people, says the Zohar, Elijah the prophet, all the nations of the world will come against the Jews in Israel with all kinds of false accusations. That's what means ba'oniyot. False accusations. Tell many of the Jews in Israel, and they will try to eliminate the state of Israel. Look, there's one country in the world. There are like waves of anti-Semitism since like its inception. All over the world. Like there's one nation that has no right for its own country. Israel. And it's like, you see it, academies around the world. You see around the world nations that are, they're being conquered. Look about the Kurdish nation, 30, 40 million people. They're being occupied by 4 countries for so many years. They have their distinguished language and culture for thousands of years. Nobody cares that they are under occupation. Look at Tibet, okay, under Chinese occupation for such a long time. Okay, look about, there's so many great nations, like with thousands of years of history, and they don't have a country and nobody cares about it. Okay? But the whole world is like caring about Israel. No, you don't have a legitimate right for your own country because, and everybody who ever read the Bible, that half of the world, more than half of the world, is somehow dedicated to the values and the culture that is coming from the Bible. And it says in the Bible very clearly that the indigenous people of Israel is the Jews, right? It's very clear. And this is something that has a continuity for thousands of years. And like, no, it doesn't exist. You are just a colonialist. You know what does it mean? A real colonialism? Taking somebody's country from taking the country from Israel, from the Israelis, or the Israelites or the Jews for the last 2,000 years, this is colonialism. But taking also their own book, the Bible, and claiming it theirs, isn't that colonialism? It's like stealing the country, stealing the culture, and then saying it's ours, never was yours. This is the worst colonialism in the history of humanity. And denying all of it with a lie, and that the Zohar said that's exactly what's going to happen. You'll be blamed by false accusations, like apartheid state and stuff like this. Whoever knows the truth, it's all false accusations. But the Zohar says that the Torah predicted that. And these false accusations will get the world against the Jews who are coming back with miracles to Israel. Okay? And the whole world will be blaming. And what will happen then? You will see so many miracles amongst those accusations. But a lot of the Jews in Israel, it says Israel will be thinking. The word is Israel. Yachshavu Israel. Israel will be thinking that how can we survive when the whole world is against us? When so many nations are against us, there's always a majority for every resolution. In the UN, against Israel, there's an automatic majority, except from the Declaration of Independence in 47 and in 22, when the League of Nations declared that it's a time legally to give the land back to the Jews. By the way, this legal declaration has never been replaced by any other declaration, legal declaration, although some people falsely think it has been replaced. Just read the history of the UN Charter, okay? Especially Article 80. And then it says, "V'nimkartem lo katuv, ela v'itmakartem." And Elijah says, look carefully about the word. It says, it doesn't say v'nimkartem. You will be sold as slaves. It says you will hitmakartem. You will be thinking that you are being sold. You will be thinking that you already lost the war. And you see a lot of people in Israel saying like, how can we survive? The whole world will be against us. The whole world is united against us. How can we survive the war? Most of the people around the world hate us. Whenever they, as I said, there's a majority in the UN against Israel, automatic majority. It doesn't matter what resolution it is. It doesn't matter whatever the UNESCO will declare Jerusalem does not belong to the Jews. Has nothing to do with the Jews. There was a majority. Hebron, that was the city of Abraham, the city of David. No, it has no Jewish traces. It's only something else, somebody else's. And there was a majority. It's like, what? That's exactly what the Zohar is saying. The Torah predicted it. And you will think, logically, how can we survive when the whole world is against us? That's the meaning of the word vehit makartem. You will give yourself away. It's like, we're isolated. Everybody is against us. And Elijah says, "Shetachshavu belvavchem shenimkartem." You will think in your hearts that you lost the war. Ve'inochem, but it's not like this. It is a promise, an oath of God. Ve'en koneh. No buyers. The word can be koneh, means also no one will control you. She'en mi sheyuchal lishlot alechem. No one, with all the wars against you, no one will be able to rule over you anymore when this will happen in the end of the days. All of this, says Elijah, will be in the end of the days. So we see from this prophecy that we are really on the days that are called the end of the days. And what else do we see, which is more important? As Elijah the prophet says and teaches that secret to Rabbi Shimon and his son, and they teach it to us. It's all about consciousness. We are talking about the Armageddon war in its full capacity. It's happening right now. What is Armageddon in Hebrew? Gog uMagog. It's coming from the Hebrew word hagigim, thoughts. We all know the war is happening in the level of consciousness. Terrorism, it's coming from terror. Terror is state of mind, nothing to do with weapons. The purpose of terrorism is not to kill people. The purpose of terrorism is to frighten people so they will have fear. Fear generates hatred. Hatred creates chaos, anarchy, and those people who are behind terrorism, they live on anarchy. When the world is organized and people are insane, there's insanity, there's no place for terrorism because everybody realizes that this is a mental disease. But when there's more and more terror, people are afraid of each other. They're afraid getting on a plane because they have to go through a lot of, tests and checks for weapons and for liquids and this and that. It's like it's all over us. And the media. The media is basically, and people start to realize that the media all around the world is part of a terroristic campaign against the people. To scare them, no matter about what's the reason, to scare, to get them hate each other, to get them fight with each other. It's all they declare it's about world unity. It's exactly the opposite. The opposite. And Elijah, the prophet, is saying it's all about the way you look at reality. In front of you, you have all his blessings. And I know, and everybody knows, right now, with the terrorism around the world, it looks like the evil is getting more and more grounds in more and more countries. And you see terrorists like getting respect in the UN for decades already. And also in governments. And suddenly all kinds of terrorist organizations are being respected while peaceful people are being stepped on by world governments. What's going on over here? And Elijah the prophet is saying it's all about the way you look at reality. You always have to say it's all about making it good. Whoever runs the show is God by himself, the creator by himself. Whoever is in control is only God by himself. And whatever you see as a curse is really a blessing. If you just look at it, and what you see is because all of these forces around the world feel so secure, they reveal themselves like never before. And people, the majority, are quietly understanding. And the time will pass by, we'll see how, because of all the power of those forces of terrorism, if it is the media, if it is people really kill others for nothing, just because of hate, just because to create fear and hatred, people will start seeing that it's all about bringing people together to be united against evil, against separation, that we are all one. We are all children of the same God. We're different because he created us differently. And every one of us has the right for what? For his happiness. Happiness, and we have to stick for that no matter what. And that's what this parasha is saying. You go after the curses, you'll be upset and hateful and resentful, and you'll be a loser. And you just blame, you'll be a victim, and you blame the whole world. And as you blame, you'll be cursed because you bring the curses upon you. But if you become spiritual and you really get yourself happy about whatever you have, so if you don't have shoes, you'll be happy that you have legs. And if you don't have legs, you have the mind. And even people without legs can be really happy because it's all based on your decision. And when people will start to realize, with all the confusion, with all the lockdowns, and the world is changing, and it is for the good. And when you really convince yourself to be happy, no matter what, to see the good in everything, no matter what, as Elijah the prophet is giving us, we will see how everything that is happening against us, it's really for us. It's all going to happen in the last days, last generation. And it's all dependent on teshuva, which means all of this, what's happening, is just to teach us, to push us, to realize we can count for our safety on money, possessions, real estate, stock market, the government. It's all about connecting, returning back to our source, to God, to the creator of our soul. And we won't be able to see it till we do teshuvah. And when we really realize that all of this confusion is just to teach us, there's only one that we can count on, the creator of this world that is everywhere. It is everything. As it says, "Leman taskilu et kol asher ta'asun." All what's happening around us right now is just from this parasha, that you will understand and get smarter about what are the rules of this world. So we had plans, and the plans were gone. Corona is there, there's a lockdown. But if you really want to be happy, to really want to feel simcha, as it says in this parasha, you really have to connect to the Creator. And because all that is happening is just to make us wiser, to make us understand how this world is working. Mi sheyesh lo lev, whoever has a heart, yistakel, will see. The Yadal Shuv Ladono, he will see all what's going on is just to push us, to encourage us, to train us to get closer to God. And then when we come back to our master, then we'll be in the place that we're supposed to be. אמר לי רבי שמעון, באיזה מקום נתגלתה גאולת ישראל בקללות האלה? With all of these curses, where is the secret of the redemption? אמר לו אליהו, Elijah said, הסתכל והבט במקום הרע ביותר בין מכל הקללות. Look at the worst curse of all of them. There's another one. And it says, הביט ומצא, שכתוב, והיו חייך תלויים לך מנגד. ופחדת לילה ויומם, ולא תאמין בחייך. And your life will be hanging in front of you. And you won't trust your life. That's a few verses back. Verse 66, chapter 29. And it says that's also a promise. When you really study the Zohar and study what we're learning, you will see that the tree of life is in front of you all the time. That the light of the Creator, the crown, the keter, the corona, which is the symbol of God is always there to help you, will be just in front of you. You just have to open your eyes and you will see that it's all for you. This is the biggest promise. But if you're not, your life will be like, I don't know, if I'm going to live, I'm not going to live. It's like, I'm going to have money, I'm not going to have money. Everything will be in doubt. These are the two aspects. This real life, the redemption is real, true life. Being a slave to the fears, that's not life. That's that slow death. But real life is there. So he wrote a letter at nighttime. Remember, Rabbi Yossi wrote a letter in the morning. Rabbi Shimon writes a letter at sundown, gave it to the dove. She went to Rabbi Yossi, that was still there waiting. As he saw the dove, says, a loyal dove, from loyal than more all the birds of the heavens. like the dove of Noah. He took the letter from the dove, came to the friends, and showed them the letter and told them the story. And he cried. Everybody was, wow, amazing. Rabbi Yehuda cried and says, whoa, we don't know where he is. But Rabbi Shimon, wherever he is, it's like he was so excited. Praiseworthy is Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, that God made with him so many miracles that hid him from the Romans who wanted to kill him. And he will be there in the Garden of Eden to welcome the Shekhinah, and he will be there with the righteous. So that's the story of that parasha, which is all the promises. It's all about the real fight that is happening all over the world, in the computers, over the newspapers, the media, people talking to each other, the social networks and the phones, the smartphones. That's where the war is happening. And our job is to see in between the lines how all of it is for the good. Just to reveal the greatness of God and to show that the good is much more powerful than evil. Good luck with that. Thank you.